Hey creative souls, not sure which point of view to use in your story? In this video, I'll give you some tips about how to sort that out. If you don't know me, my name is Johnny Mazzocco. You can learn more about me at my website, johnnymazzocco.com, or my blog, writingthroughthebody.com. And I will put links to both in the description. Sometimes the point of view to a story presents itself to us, and we just know this story needs to be in this point of view, and it just makes sense. Other times, it is helpful to really consider each possibility, each different point of view, so that you can sort out who can best tell this story, from what perspective. So let's look at first person first. And this is when a story is told from the I perspective. It's as if I personally am telling you the story. So the protagonist is telling the story usually. Sometimes we see a narrator telling a story in first person about the protagonist. That's a lot more rare than a first story account from the protagonist. So here's an example. I woke up at 4 a.m. in a cold sweat, confused, uncertain of where I was, okay? So this makes it intimate, and it can even get very interior. First person can get very interior, very inside the protagonist's mind. And that allows us to kind of rumble around in there and know their inner thoughts about everything. The downside to first person is that it can be very limited because it is from a singular point of view. And this is like what I talked about recently in another video where I was saying how writing memoir can be very limiting. Even though it can be transformative for the writer and their readers, memoir is limited because it's from that singular point of view. So in fiction, if we write from first person, we get, again, that very limited perspective. It's one very specific experience from one set of eyes, from one heart and from one mind. But sometimes first person is exactly what a story needs. And sometimes we want to limit, if you will. If we want to give this very interior, intimate view of a life or an experience that a character is having. Next, we have second person point of view. And this is when the story is told from the you perspective. And some people confuse this with when a writer uses first person and speaks directly to the reader. So for example, something like this. I told Jim if he didn't stop XYZ, that would be the end of our friendship. And if you've ever had a friendship like ours, you know exactly what I mean, right? So that's still first person, but it's the narrator or the protagonist speaking directly to the reader. But second person never includes I. Second person sounds like this. You wake up at 4 a.m. in a cold sweat, confused, uncertain about where you are. So this point of view actually makes the reader a character, makes the reader the protagonist in some ways. And that might seem like a pretty cool idea, and sometimes it is. And there's always a but, right? Doing this using second person is risky. It can come across as telling the reader what they think, do, and feel, and it can even really start to feel aggressive at times and very invasive. And this can cause a discomfort in the reader. And that isn't always a bad thing. I think sometimes to cause discomfort in readers is actually what we're after, because when people feel their emotions, it gives them an experience that they remember, and it might also shift their thinking about something. But when second person starts to feel aggressive and invasive, then it can go too far. All right, lastly, we have third person point of view. Third person point of view is what is used most often, and there are reasons for this. And I want to give you an example of what third person sounds like. He woke up at 4 a.m. confused and uncertain about where he was. All right, so third person is called omniscient. There's some distance to it. And you know, on the one hand, some people think, oh, I don't want to create distance. But here's why third person is used so often. So first of all, omniscient means knowing everything. It's like an aerial view of the whole story of, I should say, better yet, of every character. So using third person point of view allows you and ultimately your readers to really be in the know about everybody in the story, what they're thinking, feeling. And do we always want to do this with every single character? No, we have to make these choices. And we only know what works when we write it, right? Because writing is discovery. But the cool thing about third person, omniscient, it gives a more expansive understanding of the web of characters and how their personalities and intentions and storylines interconnect. But like I said earlier, there's always a but. It can also get really burdensome for you to write in this way and for the readers to read. And so that's why I said a bit earlier that we have to be judicious about how far we go with this omniscience. Do we really have to know every single little thought of every character? No, we don't. So what do? Well, you might consider this thing called close third person. So we're still using he, she, and they rather than I or you to tell the story, but you keep the deeper inner thoughts and emotions focused on the main character. And that's what I chose for my novel, Miranda's Garden. Because when the story first begins, Miranda honestly doesn't have the self-awareness to carry the first-person narrative. It would have been too confusing and vague for the reader. So I knew that in this particular story, this is what I had to do. And I've had other stories, some of my short stories, where it's very clear that this needs to be told in a first-person point of view, right? So it oftentimes takes some experimenting to figure out what works best for you. So I would love to know, what points of view are you working on in your current in-progress works? Tell me in the comments. As always, sending you mad writing mojo. Happy writing.